I'm Dane Rose, and in this video, I'll be exploring good and bad, right and wrong within a geometrical paradigm. All things begin with the one, the undifferentiated whole, the interconnected ecology, the sphere, the unconscious one. And the one is before language. And so there's no distinction, there's no consciousness in the human sense of the word. All thoughts, all consciousness emerges in the division of the one into boxes, into compartments called words. This is a finger. This is another finger. This is a V. This is a hand. And those are distinctions. The definitions of those sounds create boundaries, illusionary boundaries, between one seemingly distinct pattern and another. If somebody says, "Is anything good going on in your life?" and you say, "Yes," there's no distinction. There's no consciousness. If somebody says, "What's going on?" and you say, "Everything," there's no consciousness. If you say nothing is going on, there's no consciousness, right? The undifferentiated whole, the one, all that is. At the very most, we can be conscious of those words, all that is. But beyond that, there's no awareness, right? We have to start giving things names, labels. This part of what is blue. This part of what is white. Now we start to become aware through the lens of thought on the foundation of language. And all that is, for us as human beings, and that's all that we can understand in terms of all that is, looking out through these little microscopic incisions, right? You could look at the body as a cave, and the light inside that cave exits and enters through tiny cuts in the wall like windows in the rock, right? The mantle of the body with a few pinpricks for certain types of vibration to come in. Outside of the cave, outside of the body, all things are interconnected. Within the body, we feel isolated from the rest of the interconnected whole, from the rest of the ecology. And within the illusion of that isolation, and I say the illusion because there are so many ways, on so many different dimensions, that we are connected. The gravitational constant of this fingernail has a reflection on Mars, on Pluto, on any area of the universe. This principle of gravity is connecting all things. Space and time is connecting all things within the universe. Right? There's just electricity. The entire universe has a common ancestor in the form of the Big Bang. Right? We're all descendants of one moment in space-time. Diversifying, specializing, diversifying, synergizing, specializing. The sex of the universe as the one emerging out of the Big Bang divides into many. And the many combining and synergizing as the universe seeks to have sex with itself, to bring seeming polarities together in such a way as to create synergies where something more. You bring black to white in a prism and you get the rainbow. You get something more. You bring a man and a woman together and you get something more. As the child and its possibility field is greater than the sum of its parts because it rests on the foundation of the lineage. Both lineages. When you take two lineages and you synergize them, and the child can take the best and or the worst of both parents and create something more, something magnificent, something terrible, that is more than the sum of its parts. Right? And so within this lens, all human beings are innately drawn to an endless continuum of feeling sustainably better and avoiding feeling chronically worse. Every human, as a mental, emotional, biological program, as a mental, emotional, biological pattern, is keyed towards feeling sustainably better and avoiding feeling chronically worse. Every child likes getting milk. Every infant likes getting milk. Every person who's hungry wants to have food because it feels good, because it's nourishing, right? And setting aside for the moment the complexities of delayed gratification, right? Why does someone on the Olympics, get on an Olympic team, get up at 3 a.m. and run and do this, right? They're feeling worse so that they can feel even better, right? Why does someone give up cocaine? They're feeling worse so that they can feel sustainably better. Why does someone study for a college degree rather than stay up all night drinking and partying? Because the sophistication of the protocol for feeling sustainably better allows them to enjoy the short-term sacrifice of drinking and sex with the longer-term enjoyment of getting a degree, of making a contribution in an area that matters, right? The unconscious whole, the undifferentiated ecology, is doing okay. Since the Big Bang, and at least from our perspective, most of what's been going on since the Big Bang is not conscious, right? Our view of a rock is that that's not a conscious rock. Our view of a plant is that's not a conscious plant. But it's doing all right. If you look at the undifferentiated ecology before language, before human consciousness, during human consciousness, and after human consciousness, it's doing all right. Life, the universe, and everything, starting with an energy mass less than the size of a pea and exploding into space-time, expanding its possibility field exponentially, has been getting bigger and longer, meaning space is getting bigger every single moment that the universe has existed since its inception with the Big Bang, and time has gotten longer. Space has gotten bigger, time has gotten longer. Space and time are getting bigger and longer as we speak, and have been doing so for tens of billions of years, with no end in sight. As far as we know, 1 trillion years from now, and we're only 10, 20, 30 billion years old today, as far as we know, 1 trillion years from now, space will be even bigger than it is today, and even longer. Time will expand, and so will space. At the same time, while the universe is getting bigger and longer, or bigger and older, the universe is getting more and more complex every single day, right? Just look at this little microcosm of the universe and what's happened on this tiny planet. One of perhaps 1 trillion planets capable of forming life as we know it somewhere in the universe. On this tiny little planet, in just the last 100 years, life, human life, has been getting exponentially more complex. 100 years ago, digital washing machines didn't exist. Fax machines, cell phones, they're all more complex patterns of energy than the patterns of energy that were there before. Teslas didn't exist 100 years ago. AI, self-driving, didn't exist 100 years ago. And what's happening in just this last century on this tiny little pocket in this universe, in a small speck of time, is life is getting exponentially more complex. The patterns of energy that are creating flow and resistance on this planet, in this species alone, have been getting more and more complex. So life is getting bigger, life is getting longer, life is getting more complex. And some of those things are happening exponentially. Right? That seems to be what life's about. Now, as we figure out more complex ways to connect the possibility field, the probability field, and the actuality field all expand simultaneously. There are more possibilities today than there ever have been in the history of our universe. And 1 trillion years from now, as far as we know, there will be vastly more possibilities than there are today. possibilities for energy interaction, for energy in pattern, in form, to interact. The possibility field of energy interacting with itself within the universe is getting bigger and bigger every day. And with it, the probability field and the actuality, right? What's going on today in the universe, in this country, on this planet, is more complex than what was going on 100 years ago, or at the beginning of the Big Bang, or 10,000 years ago, right? The general trend is towards more complexity, bigger, longer, more of it, right? And more synergy, right? As energy gets more and more complex and randomly and or intentionally bumps into itself, bumps into other energy forms, some of those forms produce offspring that is more complex than the parents are, right? The children today have a number of complexities that exceed the simplicity of their parents' childhood, which exceed their parents' childhood, right? So life is getting more complex, it's getting bigger, it's getting longer. It's synergizing more. And it's going to keep doing that. Whether we, as a species, die out or become multiplanetary, it's going to keep doing that. With trillions upon trillions of planets, of energy forms out there capable of supporting some form of complex life, and with an unlimited amount of time and more space every day, somewhere within all of that possibility is the probability, is the actuality that some version of that life is going to keep becoming more and more complex. And our biology, our complexity is hardwired to succeed. We want to feel good, and it feels good to succeed. We're hardwired. Life gave us a biological urge to become more, to feel better, right? And it feels better to speak something than to go point at it, right? To say, could I have an apple? Feels better. It's more efficient than to say, and then they try to guess, right? Is that an orange? Is that, no. Right? It feels better to say, can I have an apple, than to go through charades for 20 minutes. And so we've moved from pointing and drawing to speaking because it feels better. It feels better to send a text than it does to walk 20 miles and say something and then walk 20 miles back. It feels better to drive 20 miles and say something and drive back than it does to walk, and so we have cars. We are biologically oriented towards feeling sustainably better. And we take dead ends, right? We go down this path and it's like, yeah, cocaine was good for a winter, but not for a lifetime. Lying in deceit was nice for a couple of years, but sitting in prison, not for a lifetime, right? There are paths that we explore as a species for feeling better that we hope will last. And as they crash and come down from that high, we learn or we die, right? Failure, poverty, disease, suffering, and death does not have many fans, right? So the memes of someone who succeeds, has more fun, has more competency, is more efficient, has a good time. Those memes catch on faster than the memes. Like, why is aspects of Christianity dying out, right? You could spend your Sunday afternoon looking at a dead guy with nails in his hands, in his feet, reflecting on what a rotten person you are, what a sinner you are, how you should give more of your money to the church. You could be doing that, but that meme isn't doing so well relative to pornography, relative to adrenaline addiction on various screens, relative to dopamine addiction and getting instant messages. Oh, this person liked that and this part. See, that feels better, at least in the short term. And so, life is oriented to feel better, and it feels better to succeed. It feels better to have fun. Conscious, sustainable fun is the pinnacle of this trajectory, right? It's the pinnacle. And to understand that a little bit, we have a whole host of values. I want to be powerful, someone might say. Why? Because it feels good. Ah, I see. Why? Why? So you want to be powerful because it feels good, right? Why? Why does it feel good? Because I can do whatever I want, right? Freedom. Why? Why do you want to be free? Because it feels better to do what I want than to do what I don't want, right? That's why I want power. That's why I want freedom. Now, to have power and freedom, you got to learn stuff. You got to figure out how to do stuff, right? It's all very well to say, there's my private jet. I could fly anywhere. And you say, okay, do it. Well, I could fly anywhere if I knew how to fly. Like if I knew which fuel it took and how much, I could, if I knew what I was doing, I would have power and freedom. And you can come around that a different way. Well, I know how to hire a pilot, right? But if you don't know how to hire a pilot, right? Anyone want to fly a plane? You over there, you want to fly a plane. Have you ever driven one before? But you're confident, right? You know you can do it, right? So, okay, have at it, right? So whether it's the competence to make the money needed to hire someone, or the competence to find someone, or the competence to fly it yourself, right, in order to realize power and freedom so that you can do what you want and don't have to do what you don't want, you need competency, right? I want competency. Why? so that I can get things done, so that I can succeed. Why? Because it's more fun to succeed than it is to fail. Anyone enjoy failing, right? Have a dream. Oh, I'd really like that. That'd be so cool if I could build that house. You start building, but you didn't think about the rain. You didn't worry. You didn't understand the principle that, water goes downhill, so you did the flashing backwards, and so water's coming into the house. It's not as much fun, is it, right? If you succeed at creating your dream, it's much more fun than it is to fail. Now, you keep climbing. Like, I want to be honest. Why? Why do you want to be honest? Well, because then people will trust me in the long run. In the long run, people who chronically lie do not have the trust. Well, why do you want trust? What's so great about trust? Who cares if people trust you? It's, just make things up, right? Why not lie? Well, I want to be honest so that people will trust me. Why? Why do you want people to trust you? Well, if people will trust me, then they will cooperate with me. Who cares? Why do you want people? Well, you see, if people cooperate in, for example, a free market, if I will send you money on PayPal and then you'll send me the goods, that's called cooperation. Now, what if I didn't trust you would send the goods? Well, then I wouldn't send you the money. So now I'd have to make it myself, right? Now we've just reduced the entire world to generalists. Right? I can't buy food. They might have poisoned it. It's probably rotten. They probably grew it fast with some chemical and it's just not safe. We're going to grow our own food. Okay, well that takes, 3-4 hours a day. And water, we could buy it, but, they're not the kind of people that would tell us if it had arsenic in it or contaminants, right? Then no, we're just going to get our own water with buckets or drill our own well. We could drill the well, but maybe they'd use rusted pipes and then no, we're just going to do it all ourselves because we can't trust anyone. So now the entire world stays in the agricultural age. Everyone grows their own food, does their own stuff, and, takes more time, takes more money. In other words, if you can trust people and be trustworthy and be trusted, you get synergies, you get specialization, you get an exponential explosion of efficiencies and abundance. And being abundant feels more fun, is more successful than being poor, than never having enough, right? Why do you want to be abundant? Because it feels good, right? You just keep climbing the ladder of values. Discipline. Got to work hard. Why? Well, because then you get more done. Who cares about getting stuff done? Well, if you get stuff done successfully, you can have more fun. Huh? Well, just think of it. How would you like to go jet skiing? What's that, right? Well, it's this adrenaline rush. You rush along the water. Oh, I want to go jet skiing. Well, somebody has to build the jet ski. You could build the jet ski, and somebody has to make the money to buy the parts and design it. Oh, but I don't feel like doing that. Look, it's a nice day out. I don't want to learn a CAD program. I don't want to save up money and put it in an investment account so that it will appreciate and then I can buy a jet ski. I just don't have that feeling, right? I just want to wake up and maybe munch on some grass, right? That's what cows do. They wake up and, they never really feel like building a jet ski. Cows don't feel like studying, reading a book. It's just like, it's too much work, right? So you get up, you feel that feeling, and you chew on some grass, right? And nothing wrong with that if you're a cow. There's nothing wrong with it if you're a human being. Get up, gather a few things, eat it, right? That's the history of our species, hunting and gathering. But, at some point, it became more fun. Someone saw the jet ski and said, I want one of those. And it's like, okay, right? The Faustian bargain, but, okay, right? You're going to have to go to school for 17 years and learn mathematics, learn English, learn this, learn to write. Then, right, that's all on the way to the jet ski, right? Then you're going to have to get a job. Then you're going to have to learn to get good enough to make more money than your expenses. Then you're going to have to save up, and you're going to have to do that. And then, maybe by your 20th birthday, right? Maybe by the time you're 20, you can now afford a jet ski. Or maybe you go and work at a jet ski repair place and say, I'm going to work here for a year and I want, some jet ski that passes through here that nobody wants to buy. I want a jet ski. You just show me what to do, clean things, do this, and then I get a jet ski. Well, that's called discipline. It's doing something you don't particularly want to do so that you can have something you particularly want in the future. So that takes thought, right? A cow doesn't have to think too much about, they go to the easiest grass and they're contented, wonderfully contented, right? It's a good day to be a cow. Chew on some grass, right? But there's something that says, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be great to race along the lake in my jet ski? That's what I want. So I'm going to do this so that I can do that. Why? Because it's more fun to have a jet ski than not. Now, I could steal a jet ski, right? But, after my best friend ends up in prison for 3 years, after I pay a $1,000 penalty and have to do 200 hours of community, it doesn't feel as fun to steal a jet ski as to own one free and clear, right? And so, those two memes, some people try to steal the jet ski and notice how fun that is. And some people learn skills, make themselves useful, save up enough money, and buy the jet ski and see how that is. Those two memes duke it out, right? And most people decide that it's more successful to have the legal right to the jet ski, to not be a fugitive. Of course, if you are a fugitive, it might be handy having a jet ski, right? You jump on your jet ski and, but, they've got helicopters and, it's, where do you put the stolen jet ski, right? It's, let's just do the work to get our own jet ski free and clear that we can use whenever we want to use it, right? And then once we get that, we want something else. We want a faster jet ski. We want a quieter jet ski. Maybe we want a hydroplane, right? Going up and go above the, I'm tired of all those waves. I want this, the new and improved jet ski. And so why? Because it's more fun to have the new and improved jet ski than it is to have, the paddle boat. So it's just more fun, right? You look at them, they're getting more adrenaline, they're getting more dopamine. On that, I'm paddling around, I'm not laughing, and I was like, I want to have that sensation. Why? Because it's more fun, because it's more successful. Now, the only thing up at the top here that has no explanation, right? Why do you want to be successful? Because it's more fun than chronically failing. It's that simple. It feels better to succeed than it does to fail. Walking up to someone and saying, wow, you are so attractive. I'd like to hang out with you. I'd love to have magnificent, beautiful, long sex with you. And they walk away, right? Is that really as much fun as if they say, yes, that's exactly what I want with someone like you, right? When you succeed, it feels better than when you fail, particularly if you haven't been cross-wired, right? Some parents, for your own good, I love you, this is for your own good. And then you set out to seek love for your own good, and sometimes love doesn't feel so good. It feels familiar of the family, but it doesn't feel so good. And then love gets a bad rap. Don't say it. Oh, you've ruined it. You said you love me. See, I don't like being hit. I don't like being bossed around for my own good. It doesn't feel good. So now that you've said that you love me, I've got to say goodbye, right? Because we've confused love with abuse, right? We've cross-wired the words with horrible sensations, right? So then you have people seeking not to be in love because it feels better than to be hit and bossed around by well-meaning people, right? So up at the top, though, conscious, sustainable fun is fun because it's fun. It feels better to have fun than not to have fun. It's more fun to have fun than not to have fun. So it's at the top of the pyramid, right? Because it's fun. Sustainably, consciously, right? That's where we're wired to end up. And it's only a matter of time. Now, admittedly, we as a species could blow ourselves up with World War III or World War IV or World War V. And admittedly, it may feel like it's more fun to threaten the other guy than to back down, right? Than to be oppressed. And that's why wars feel better. They're not going to tell us what to do because it doesn't feel good to be told what to do, right? So we're going to bomb them. And they're going to bomb us. And we're going to bomb them, right? Because they don't want to be told what to do either. They don't want to live in fear either, right? And so, it doesn't feel very good to go to war. But it doesn't feel very good to capitulate for no other reason other than fear, right? Just don't blow us up and we'll do whatever you say. That doesn't feel very good, right? And same for the other side. They don't feel very good about backing down or not being respected or, dominating effectively, right? So that doesn't feel as good, right? If they can get us to be dominated, that will feel better in the short term than maybe feeling insignificant. And so, we certainly can always do that in the short-term gratification of, no one's going to tell me what to do, and no one's going to tell me what to do, so let's just destroy and blow up our families and our ecology and ruin the economy and all that because we're not going to feel bad by someone else bullying us and telling us what to do, right? So we can do that at any time. We have done it, we are doing it, and we will do it again. That's why fighting a war feels better, at least in the short run, right? In the short run, you give us this territory. No, we're not going to be intimidated. We're not going to give you that territory. We're not going to do it your way. Feels great. It's wonderful, right? In the short term, a little bit of cocaine, a little bit of ecstasy, a little bit of anonymous sex off the books, a little bit of embezzlement. Feels great in the short run. Going to war. We're not going to be told what to do. Feels better, frankly, than saying, we're not going to war. We're going to be told what to do. We're frightened and there's not much we can do about it. And we're going to appease these dickheads that are frightening us. We're going to go over there and say, Mr. Dickhead, what do you want us to do so that you won't throw bombs at us? Oh, you want us to wash your car at for a low price. You want us to wear badges, as second-class people. That's what you'd like us to do so that you won't blow us up. Yes, that's what we want you to do, right? Feels good, right? In the short term. They feel good, right? But we don't feel so good, right? So that's why wars happen, right? That's the way it's going to be. No one's going to tell us what to do. That's not the way it's going to be, right? So in the short term, it always feels much better to go to war, right? We're going to tell you what to do. No one's going to tell us what to do. What's the obvious solution? Fighting, right? Let's see who can blow up as many children as possible, and maybe you'll break the other group's spirit. Maybe you'll inconvenience them and they'll just say, okay, fine, you can tell us what to do, right? Okay, we'll clean your car for low wages and do this, right? And good, right? That's the way it's going to be. But, eventually that's not as much fun as being free, right? So anytime you imprison someone, they have the same drive, innate drive to feel sustainably better as you do, which means that all domination is short-lived. In the scheme of life, it's short-lived, right? Either the dominating force is so effective at domination that they wipe out those that they're dominating and using, they expend them, or the constant deviation from feeling sustainably better of the oppressed leads to grit, leads to discipline, leads to planning. Whereas the lethargy and decadence of the oppressor, right? Because if you're the oppressor and you've got lots of luxury, well, it takes effort to oppress someone. It takes effort. You have to pay taxes. You have to use surveillance companies. You've got to intimidate. You've got to constantly scare other people, and it just doesn't feel good in the long run. It doesn't feel satisfying. It's not all there is, right? So the oppressor, it's not a very fun game in the long run. And the oppressed, it's not a very fun game either, which is why any group of people that has ever been oppressed within 1,000 years maximum has overthrown their oppressor. And often it goes to the other side, right? They think that they've been watching their oppressor have better food, have better sex, have guns and all this stuff, and they think, well, that's what I want to be, right? That's their initial role model, is I want to stop being me, the oppressed, and I want to be what? Something more fun than being oppressed, which is, well, the easiest thing to target, right, is I want to be like them when I have the chance to make you feel small and wash my car. And so there's often a cycle, right? And it's a cycle because if the flip is done successfully, and now you're up on top and oppressing, it's only a matter of time before the innate human drive to feel sustainably better in those you are oppressing pushes against the biggest obstacle of feeling sustainably better, which is you, right? If you get your well-being from oppressing me, then my greatest well-being is killing you or overthrowing your power structure, which means now your well-being is going down. And if it flips and then your greatest well-being is getting rid of me, either there's a genocide, that wipes the other side off, but that also then leads to a dead end, right? If you get your thrill from oppressing, you have to have someone to oppress. Otherwise, you can't get your thrill, right? But if you keep the oppressed alive, eventually life channels grit, intelligence, discipline, etc., and you get overthrown. Or if you kill everyone that you're oppressing so that they can't overthrow you, well, then you don't have anyone to oppress, right? Then you got to find another group that you haven't killed. Then you can oppress them until they overthrow, until they take revenge, etc., right? And so the spiral of violence from the oppressed to the oppressor, from the oppressed to the oppressor, right, continues indefinitely, right? Until, right? Because the level of consciousness it takes to create a problem isn't the level of consciousness it takes to solve the problem. If you were smart, you wouldn't create the problem. If you're dumb, you create the problem. But because you're dumb, you can't fix the problem you created. Until you're smart, and then you stop causing the problem to begin with, right? So that's, that goes around. And it's more fun to be smart than it is to be dumb. It's more fun to succeed based on intelligence than to fail based on stupidity. And so eventually, everyone, after bumbling into enough areas, chooses to do the things that are more successful. Eventually. Not necessarily, but eventually. That's where it all ends up. And so the question about right and wrong, what does it mean to say this is the right way to do things and this is the wrong way of doing things? Well, in that largest of human values, to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse, what it means is that this is a closer way to feel sustainably better than this other way. That's the right way, right? If you're carrying a 2x4, right? You're carrying a 2x4, and you've got 2 trees here. If you walk the 2x4 over this way, you bang into a tree. If you bang into a tree, it's not as much fun as if you move the 2x4 where you want it to go through the trees, which is this way, right? So within the context of a goal, there is a right way and there is a wrong way within the context of a goal, right? If I want to build my house over here, let's say here's my building site, and the 2x4 is here, I've got to walk the 2x4 up and then down, because if I go directly sideways, I'll bang into the tree. Now, the right way is the way that facilitates the goal with the least amount of energy, right? Because if I was to say to you, here's what we do in our cult, you get in front of these two trees here, right? Right? Two people holding the board, right? You get in front of these two trees, you get almost to the house, and then you start doing a dance. Chanting, dancing, and you dance and chant for 36 hours, and then you deliver the board to the building site. In other words, you get between two trees, and then you start the ceremony. Da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. Do this, da-da-da-da-da, for 36 hours, and then you deliver the board. Well, the goal is to build the house, right? And the person over here, well, they've got two trees as well. And they just walk through the trees without hitting anything, drop. In fact, they bring two 2x4s at a time. They bring a comfortable load. They drop them down and they build the house. And they get the house done before winter, because their process, their protocol took 2 minutes. This protocol took 36 hours, right? So when we say this is the right way to do it, what we mean is that this is a better way to achieve your goal than this way, or this way, or this way. And the reason there's only one right way and many wrong ways is because within the probability field, right? Because if we step into the possibility field, well, we could say that the right way is to snap your fingers and magically the house is built. That's the possibility field. There is such a possibility out there. Jump into a parallel universe and where your house is already built, right? And just activate the time warp dimensional tunnel with a thumb click and, right, there's your house. You're now in a different probable universe. And admittedly, if the goal was to have one's own house as quickly as possible, and one knew how to do that reliably, that would be the right way to do it. But, standing there, clicking, right? Or imagining, what if I had a genie in a bottle and rubbed a lamp and could just do that. And so I'm not gonna learn architecture. I'm gonna look for lamps, right? I'm gonna look for lamps. Oh, there's an old lamp. Genie. Oh, but the next one, right? It could be there, right? So it's the fastest way within the probability field. And what's the probability field, right? Well, it's getting bigger with the information age. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos on how to build a house, why to build a house, how to do it like this, and they're all of the videos that are worth watching tell you how to do something better to get more value for less energy. Like, would you like to watch a video that says you could buy this product on Amazon, the exact same product, delivered to your door for $15.99? Or you could go on a trek to the Himalayas by camel and $26,000. I mean, first you have to buy the camel, right? You can't be cheap on that. That's your mount, right? $26,000 later in camel feed and stuff. You then get the same amount. Now, here's what you have to do. Here's how you buy a camel. You know, don't just pay the first asking price for a camel. I mean, don't be ridiculous. No, you've got to haggle, right? That takes several days probably for the best price. See, we're already off track. You're thinking, wait a minute, I can just buy with one click, right? If the goal is to get the object with the least expenditure of energy in time and money and natural resources, then as soon as you mention the word camel, I'm out, right? There's no way where me interacting with a camel. No, but this is the best route through the desert, right? It's the best time of year to cross the Sahara. And the guide is offering half price. You know, 3,000 rupees. Across the whole Sahara. I mean, it is normally 20, 30,000, right? This is a huge discount, right? I'm not interested. If that's the tack that you're taking compared to 24-hour delivery for $15.99, right? That's the best way, unequivocally, relative to camels, right? Now, if there is no Amazon, if there is no free delivery, if the item doesn't even exist in the civilized world, but it exists across the desert, then camels start to be interesting. And getting the best price for the camel and the right time of year, all of that becomes critical information. It becomes the right path. And so the first thing to understand, and the reason there's only one right path in a given context for a given person is there is an obvious way you can measure the goal, right? You can take the road that goes like that, or you can take the road that is like that, right? Here you are. You want to go down that road, or you want to go down that road, and your goal is to end right here as quickly as possible. Once you've established your goal, see, there are no other roads. Now, in the possibility field, what if they built a tunnel, right? What if they had Hyperloop? Well, then that might be the best way, but it isn't there, right? It's in the the possibility field, or even the probability field if they're getting permits, etc. But it's not here, right? The right way has an objective measure in a given situation. This is the right way within this context. Within this context, this is the right way. This will take less energy, less time, less money, less natural resources to achieve the objective than any other path available. That's the right path. When you say, that's the wrong way, you turn the wrong way. It's not the wrong way if your goal isn't to be efficient, right? If your goal was to have a confusing experience or to spend more money on gasoline or to get lost out in the middle of nowhere with some cute or handsome something, and have uninterrupted time to make out, well, then suddenly this is the right path, right? You can achieve all those objectives, right? Very long, windy, slow, consume lots of electricity or gasoline or camel feed, right? Suddenly that becomes the right way. And within any situation, there are a certain number of actionable paths that are feasible. I mean, there's always becoming an outlaw, shooting up, grabbing a cab driver, drive me there, this, or breaking into the neighbor's garage and, racing off. There's always, different paths that can be taken, but most of them aren't common paths because they're not efficient in the long run. I mean, your neighbor may stay friendly the first time you break in and steal their Ferrari, but by the third or fourth time you've crashed in their car, breaking in, now they're hostile. Well, now the hostility of the neighbors is more costly than having to walk or get an Uber, right? And so it wasn't the right path. Right? If you save 10 cents today and set yourself up for $1 tomorrow, by the time tomorrow comes along, you realize that wasn't the right path. The right path is the path that takes you to your goal sustainably. Not just like, oh, there's my house, and then it fell down. Right? Because there's that, right? Why get it engineered? It's so expensive and tedious. Why pay for top grade? Why nail 8 nails in it? Seems to be holding up fine with 1 nail. Well, there it is. Oh, the breeze knocked it over, right? And then you say, even though I don't want to nail 8 nails into every piece of plywood, next time I'm going to do it. Why? Because it isn't any fun to have to pick up all the rubble, right, and do it all over again at twice the effort, right? I thought I was saving time, but I took a shortcut that wasted a lot of time and money, right? It probably would have been better in the long run to mention that I was married, would have taken just a few minutes, saved lots of effort, lots of lies. Probably a good idea, right? It seemed, nice to save that little 20 seconds that might lead to an hour's exploration of facts and relevant data. But, you see, now all this 3 months of mirage is all going to come tumbling down because I didn't build on solid ground. I built on ground that's falling away. So there is a right way of doing things, right? Now, it's in everyone's interest to do things the right way. You like going to the dentist? Well, it's easy. You just hire someone that's going to make sure all your fillings fall out every week, and you can go back every single week. And they'll probably give you a discount. Frequent customer, I tell you what, this filling falls out 9 times, the 10th time is free, right? You can just spend all your time. Enjoy the dentist, right? Oh, I love talking with that dentist. Oh, okay, great, right? So that's the right way to do it, right? But if you actually, let's say you want to be reliable at work, and suddenly you can't talk when the filling falls out or a tooth falls out, right? Right? It's not as efficient. So there is a right way that is objective within space-time, within a given context, within a given goal. There is a right way to do things. And there are many wrong ways of doing things. Strangling yourself, for example, not usually a great way to get a promotion, right? How about buying a fish? Maybe if I bought a fish, no, it's not really a great way to get a promotion. Picking the key person that's going to promote you and making yourself useful without being threatening, and then figuring out the easiest, best way to do that with the least amount of time, money, and natural resources to deliver on that, that's the right way. And there are a lot of things you can be doing, from chanting Om Re Kro Kro to spitting in bushes that just don't yield results. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things. And that's the path of grace, the path of competence, the path of excellence, the path of intelligence, the path of efficiency, right? The right way is a convergence of competence, efficiency, intelligence, grace, excellence, confidence. Any one of those, they're all pointing there. To be competent, you've got to be efficient. To be efficient, you've got to be competent. To be intelligent, intelligence measured by the efficiency with which energy is converted into sustainable well-being, you've got to be competent. You've got to be efficient. If you are efficient and intelligent, you will be confident because you will succeed and you will have the backlog of success to back you up. You will say, I succeeded at this, 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 and this. So I am confident. Based on what? My track record. Right? So, and trustworthy ties into that, right? If you know what you're doing and you do it reliably when you say you will, you become trustworthy. So that's, that's the right path. I could do it this inefficient way. No, I could do it this efficient way. I could not know what I'm doing. I could know what I'm doing. I could learn it by making 1,000 mistakes, or I could learn it by getting a mentor who's one of the best in the field and saying, please, I'll give you any amount of time and money and support, but show me how to do this the best way. And then doing what they're suggesting until you learn a better way of doing it. You're not reinventing everything. You're starting with that, right? So that's the right way. Now, what I want to talk about in the context of geometry, and now we're going to go into abstraction, is, first of all, the lens, right? So we have the unconscious, the undifferentiated whole. We have the one. And then we descend into the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of good and bad, right and wrong. We have distinction, black and white, up and down, right? And every cult emphasizes half, right? Now, this is where we go into delusion at some level, but also where we go into culture at another level, right? If you worship the Black Madonna, white could suggest you're going in the wrong direction, right? If you worship a synthetic rendition of Jesus, and synthetic, I mean someone on white skin with blonde hair that has nothing to do with the historical body of Jesus, and then you say that black and dark is Satan and all of that, well, then suddenly dark looks ominous and white and light becomes the path forward, right? If you have a dualistic paradigm. You divide the world into two, then it's a very, very difficult world. Because, first of all, it's important to understand anytime you divide the one into two, they are always two equal halves. I mean, you take a calculator and you divide 1 into 2. It doesn't show one is bigger or smaller than the other half, right? That's the definition of half, right? It's you take the whole, the sphere, the 1, you divide it into 2. You have two equal halves. That's the scientific reality. There's no argument. If you cut a lead ball directly down the middle and weigh them both, there's no argument about which is heavier, which is better. They're exactly the same proportionally. But now you can, now that you've started to divide everything through that lens of duality, now you have black and white, male and female, up and down, right and left, hot and cold, you name it. The whole world is now divided into two camps, right? And if you overlay right and wrong into a dualistic lens, half of the world is right and half of the world is wrong, which often correlates mentally to half of the people are good and half of the people are bad. Now, if you decide that half of reality is bad and half of reality is good, then in order to pursue success and sustainable fun, you must go to war with the other half. And here's why it's so difficult, right? Well, first of all, they're equal halves. Secondly, the uninterrupted ecology is interdependent. Tiny little example. Let's say I don't like gravity. It's not my thing. And we zoom into the gravitational pull on this fingernail, and we just change the gravitational dial, right? See it? It's pulling down. Takes about, what, an ounce of pressure to pull off of gravity? I don't want to spend an ounce of pressure just to lift my finger. I want to turn gravity down so that I only have to spend a quarter ounce to lift this finger, right? So we just turn gravity down, quarter ounce. It's wonderful, right? The entire universe has just become 75% less gravitational, because that bit of code links everything in space-time. There isn't a single thing out there in space-time. There's no object on Mars, no object on Venus, no object on the North Pole that isn't affected by gravity as a constant bit of code that's rippling through the entire fabric of space-time. And if I change the formula, right, that the mass combined by the velocity and this equals that, and I change that, well, let's just change it. I mean, because we observe that, right? It's not like this is the law that we made up. We don't make up these laws. We just observe them. And if the universe seems to do the same thing over and over again during our lifespan, we call it a law. It could be a habit, could be a whim, could be a micro eddy, right? I mean, sometimes when the stream is running downhill this way, there's a little back eddy right after a stump or a rock. The universe could be rushing away, or the multiverse could be rushing away, getting rid of gravity. And then we could be in this tiny little universe in the multiverse. that is going against the flow. So that gravity is being just dispensed with throughout most of the multiverse, but in this little area where gravity is holding its own and doing its thing. And for the next 28 trillion years, our universe will demonstrate the habit of gravity. But on the 29th trillionth year, this rock will have eroded, and the little back eddy in which our universe was caught will continue along with 75%, 80, 90% of the rest of the multiverse in a movement to dispense with gravity over a 2 trillion year period, right? Over the next 2 trillion years, gravity's out. And what else is in, right? Well, we don't have a word for it, so we cannot be conscious of it. It's not in our probability field. Right? So whatever they are, we just observe habits that seem to have been around for hundreds, thousands, at least, at the very least, while we've been observing them, right? Because, we can't, but, we can infer, like, it seems like 1 billion years ago, this was happening, right? And so we can, certainly take certain habits and say that habit seems to, for example, the habits I alluded to, right? We do seem to be getting bigger regularly, for billions of years. And we do seem to be getting older regularly for billions of years. And we do seem, at least in portions, to be getting more complex. And so these are habits, right? You observe them, you give them a name, you give the habit a name, and you can give it the name of a law, you can give it a name of a tendency, right? The adolescence of the universe tends to do this, at least in our universe. But by the time the universe becomes an adult, well, then it will do this and this. We can hypothesize, right? How long is that going to take? Because the universe doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon or running out of time. We may be running out of time. Ice caps may be running out of time, but the universe is not running out of time. The universe has more and more time every single moment in its existence. And for the next 20 trillion years, the universe will have even more time and more time to do whatever it is the universe wants to do, is programmed to do over the next 20 trillion years. A timescape that we cannot begin to understand within the framework of any exponential curve. Like you talk about Moore's law, you think that just comes out of nowhere, right? That the laws that we as a very, very tiny fractal representation of life experience in a very, very tiny fractional representation of our technology has nothing to do with the rest of the universe? The universe may have Bohr's law, Core's law, Dohr's law, in which consciousness expands exponentially. Every 2 years it doubles, and there's all kinds of patterns and habits in a space this big and this long that may be developing, and an exponential habit, an exponential curve or tendency within a 1 trillion year time frame. We can't even see into the next 100 years, right? Meaning that if you take a bet of 1,000 people about what's going to happen over the next 50 years, the next 50 years, every single one of them, if they go into high resolution with their predictions, every single one of them will be wrong at least some of the time. Maybe they'll be right with the direction, but it took a different form, or the time frame will be right, but the shape is different, or the shape is similar, but it'll take shorter or longer, right? Every single one of us will be wrong. there will be a gap between what we see now and what happens 50 years from now. 50 years and 1 trillion years. Many times bigger than the entire existence of the universe, right? But one of the things I think we can be fairly safe with is understanding the drive. There is an innate drive in life to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. Whether you're a tiger, a cat, a male, a human female, you want to feel better. And you want to feel better longer. And you want to feel better more dimensionally. And you want to spend less energy doing it. You don't want to go on a 6-month camel ride to get a glass of water. You want to walk over to the sink. And you don't want to have to turn the sink on when the sink starts reading your mind. And you don't want to have to walk over there when your robot delivers you a glass of water. Right? You want, what you believe will make you feel sustainably better, and you want it with less energy. And the life forms that can get sustainable well-being, including reproduction, more efficiently than other life forms, tend to expand. Which is why human beings are an expansive species, at least at this point in Earth's evolution. Going back to the pursuit of right and wrong within geometry, at the crudest, most simple level, you take half of who you are and you put it in battle with the other half. These are my good thoughts and these are my bad thoughts. And it's the job of my good thoughts to overcome, to conquer, and suppress and repress the bad thoughts. It's a battle you cannot win. Why? Because whenever you take a tug of war with two exactly equal sides, you can stand there for 3 days, pulling at 388.7 ounces of pressure here and 300, pull the exact same amount. You've got a strong enough rope. You're just going to stand there indefinitely. So it's a very inefficient way to win. But basically, the mode is, this is the right thought, this is the right thing to do, and that's the wrong thing to do, and that's the wrong thought, because that's half of who you are. Then you reward and virtuous, and then every time you stray from the path, then you have to come back and make amends, which takes energy and time. So it's a very inefficient system. My good side is fighting my bad side. My good nature is fighting my bad nature. The good people are fighting the bad people, is the externalization of that. We're the good people, of course, right? And we're fighting the bad people. Very, very inefficient, very crude. But also, imagine, one of the reasons geometry is so useful with this, imagine taking the Earth and actually cutting it in half, to take this to its logical extreme. Obviously, if half of the Earth is bad, then you want to get rid of, the Earth would be a better place if it could just get rid of the bad countries. Well, what's the obvious thing to do? You just cut the world in half, make sure that the bad countries are on that half. But you see, when you're dealing with an interconnected whole, an ecology, what happens to the lakes and oceans that are cut down the middle? Well, they start running into the Earth's core. And what happens then? Well, they start emitting steam. And both the good people and the bad people are killed. Right? In other words, if the fantasy of the good people, and everyone is the good people, if the fantasy of the good people to get rid of the bad people could be, realized, then the entire ecology of cultural migration, right? The Arabic countries gave birth to mathematics, which we now use to make bombs to blow up Arabic countries. But what if we had truly separated the divide between the good people and the bad people? Well, then there is no Arabic country to provide the math, to make the bombs, to drop on Arabic people, right? In the Christian versus Muslim tension, we're the right ones, everyone else is wrong. We're the right ones, everyone else is wrong. Well, you see the problem, right? And what if the dust in the Sahara Desert didn't blow thousands of miles and fertilize the Brazilian rainforest? Right? What then, right? What if the desert was planted and there were no more dust storms and the Amazon withered? Right? What if there were no volcanoes to help shift the Earth's tectonic plates, right? You see, what if you could stop the rain so it could always be a sunny day? You have massive amounts of problems whenever you divide the one into two and then take a self-referential stance in favor of one over the other, right? If that becomes extreme and you go to battle with half of what is interconnected with the other half, and so one is going to battle with oneself. That's where language deludes the reality. Now, this simple form of distinction and human consciousness and separation emerges or develops into a slightly more complex form. So now we break the world into three parts: the good, the bad extreme, and the bad extreme is often the way it's done, right? This is the good way, and then this is too extreme, and that's like, this is the right amount of water. That's too much water, that's too little water. For anything, right? Too much water, you're drowning. Too little water, you die of thirst, right? So the middle way, well, of course, that's very relative. What's the best for human beings may be the worst for ants or for mosquitoes. So we divide the world into three: heart, mind, and body, good, bad, and in the middle, right, left, and center, right? So now you've got a three-point system. Well, within the three-point system, you can, if you say that this is the middle way and this is the extreme bad and this is the extreme other bad, you can have a minority of the good and then everything on the sides are bad. So you can have a war. You can expand, the negativity, the projection. But the other thing is breath, the cycle, the circle. The circle, the cycle, the breath. The right way is to participate in the cycle. Everything within space-time is a cycle, is a rhythm. Now, some things have very complex rhythms. Some things have very simple rhythms, like a pendulum just swings left and right. The breath comes in and it comes out. The world goes round and round and round and round. Everything is a cycle. Everything is a circle. Everything is a breath. And you see the problem when you interrupt or pit one part of the cycle against the other, right? I love grown-ups, I hate children. You see the problem, right? I like breathing in deeply, but I hate exhaling. You see the problem. I like women, I hate men. You see the problem, right? Particularly if you want more women, you've got to have at least a few men to inseminate the eggs, right? I hate parents, I just want children. You see the problem, right? In order for any part of the cycle or the circle to exist, the other parts have to exist. I like order, but I don't like chaos. You see the problem, hopefully, right? Because for order to get better, like what happens in the paradigm of a cult or culture when this triangle is evolving? Well, what's it going to evolve to? According to life, something more complex. And so it has to erode, and then something more complex has to take its place. It has to erode, and something more complex takes its place. Now, in the space in between, you have chaos. You have disorder to transition towards higher and higher complexity. In other words, so if you love order, you want more order. In order to have more order, you have to have more complexity. In order to have more complexity, you have to evolve from what's simple to the complex. And in order to do that, you have to have change, which means chaos, which means the unknown, which means uncertainty. You have to love chaos in order to love more order. That's just the way it is. You have to love men in order to love women. You have to love parents in order to love children. You have to love night in order to love day. You have to love right in order to love left. So, in the evolution from the crudest to the most complex, the first thing to understand is that the system is created by thought. It's not real. The uninterrupted whole, the uninterrupted ecology, that's real. The one, all that is, it's real. But there's no consciousness, there's no language. All that is. You don't have this vast expanse because there's no words. Like what all that is? Well, as soon as you start breaking it into pieces, well, this car and this seat belt in this car, and now there's 4 seat belts and they're black and they're shiny. Now there's 4 billion cars, right? Now suddenly the world is getting very big because you're expanding it by pieces. You're breaking it up into pieces called words, and then you're composing them and you're getting a whole pile. And as you get a whole pile of words, you get a whole pile of awareness, of consciousness, and then suddenly your reality, your conscious reality, starts to get very big. You have to use words to make your conscious reality big. And in order to use words, and more of them, you have to have more and more pieces. In order to create a really conscious, complex puzzle, you need to cut the circle, into 1,000 pieces. And now every piece, and you start to become more, you could just say the one, the image, right? But then you say, no, this piece, of this word, of this tree, of this pattern, of this red. And now suddenly your whole world becomes a 1,000-piece puzzle. there is a right way of moving within breath, within a cycle, right? As the sun is rising in the east and setting in the west, the right thing to happen, meaning the most intelligent and efficient thing for well-being, is for the sun to move all the way around again and then rise again on the east. When you're taking a breath, the right thing to do is the next part of the cycle. Like if you're spending all your money, the next part of the cycle, if you want to live and continue the cycle, is you have to make a lot of money so that you can spend a lot of money. Now, whether you spend it in the bank or in investments or shopping, that's the cycle. Make a lot of money, spend a lot of money. Make a lot of money, spend a lot of money. Take an in breath, take an out breath. Take an in breath, take an out breath. Now, these cycles are thousands, tens of thousands, millions, billions of years old. And they move towards balance. Now, I can change the cycle. I can go, I can make the cycle that was rich, I can make it shallow and feel less. I can do that. But if I breathe in, I've eventually got to breathe out, or I die. And so that brings in the next aspect of right and wrong. Once you move in one direction, the right way is the other direction. It's not, I give away $1, and then I give away $10, and then I give away $1,000 that I don't have, and then I give away $1 million that I don't have, right? I give away $1, I make $1. I give away $10, I make $10. I make $10, I invest, I give away $10, right? That's the routine. I go to sleep, I wake up. I wake up, what's the next move? Going to sleep. And so the other thing to understand in the geometric of right and wrong is the pendulum swing from opposites. I work on my inner life, I go do something with it in my outer life. I work on my outer life, I become successful, I buy the freedom to do something with my inner life. To violate the pendulum swings is to die as effectively as to violate the breath. Doesn't matter if you if you will not breathe in, you will be dead. Now that's a little microcosm, right? If you will not give energy out after receiving too much energy, you will be dead, right? If an electrical motor receives energy and doesn't turn, it will catch fire, right? There is a flow, there is an order in every part of reality and every rhythm. And when we violate it by being too much in our heads and not enough in our body, too much in our body and not enough in our heads, giving too much and not receiving, receiving too much and not giving. When we violate that circle, that cycle, we die. Mentally, emotionally, right? If I read 100 books and I don't give anything, my mind dies more than if I read a book and share some nuggets. Read a book and share some nuggets, right? If I keep sharing nuggets and don't receive anything, I die, mentally, emotionally, physically. So the right way, with the underlying drive of feeling sustainable well-being and avoiding chronic and unnecessary suffering, the right way is to understand the cycle that we're in at the scale that we're in, right? If we're in a $10 scale, make $10, spend $10. Make $10, spend $10. If we're at $1 million scale, it's make $1 million, spend $1 million. Make $1 million, spend $1 million. If we're on a walking scale and we're walking in 3-inch steps, right? Walk 3 inch, walk 3 inch, walk 3 inch, walk 3 inch. If we're at a 1 meter step, walk, walk, right? That's where we maintain the center of grace, the center of balance. It's in the place in between that pendulum swing. So wherever we have swung hard, at the natural point of that cycle reaching a certain point, life will take us in the opposite direction, just like a pendulum. That's life. And vitality, right? What we experience, our guide, our biology will be saying yes. If we laze around on the beach for 3 years drinking margaritas, if you've ever done that, there comes a point when it's sickening. And when getting a focused, disciplined routine and getting stuff done and curbing addictions and sacrificing sensual pleasure for discipline feels amazing. Feels so good. And if you move in that direction, more and more regimentation, more and more discipline, less and less hedonic pleasure, there will come a point when that feels worse and worse and worse. You'll start looking at people on the beach with nothing to do for the next 3 months, and you'll feel that that's heaven. And as you move towards that, taking a weekend off on the beach, having a few you will feel amazing because you're going back to grace. You're going back to the easiest point, which is the center, to which all extremes come back. So if you're coming here, at some point you need to come back here. So this is the right path, which is why the right path for one person is not the right path for the other, right? The pendulum within the circle for this person that's been like all fun and no play for, they didn't even have a childhood. They had to take care of their parents. Then they sacrificed their career. They've never had sex, etc., right? Their pendulum is at a completely different point than this person's pendulum who's had doting parents and rich grandparents. They've never worked a day in their life, right? The point of grace for both of these people through the opposite extreme is the opposite because of where they are in the cycle, right? If I've been holding my breath and you've been exhaled, and I meet both of you, I'm going to tell you inhale, and I'm going to tell you exhale, and both of you will experience the grace of coming back to center, and you'll go to the opposite extreme. First, and then you'll come to that moment of center, and it's going to feel incredible. It's going to feel amazing. Then you go into the one, and that's the cycle of life. That is what's right. But people are at different points of the cycle at different times. The medicine, the grace, the sustainable well-being comes from pushing and then going back. And the joy point, the ease point, the ecstasy is in the middle. And in order to come to the middle in that real way, you can't stay in the middle. Like you don't breathe in much, you don't breathe out. That's death. That's stagnation. You go into the discomfort of this extreme, you go into the discomfort of that extreme. And then you feel the bliss, the grace, the peace in the middle of the extreme of, right? And it's not too extreme, right? So there's a difference, right, between going in a sauna, going in an ice bath, and going in a volcano and sitting, frozen in ice for 1,000,000 years. Like, those are the extremes that don't work, right? So there's a range that brings about vitality in the rhythm. That's a better range, generally, than that, right? Too shallow. There's not enough range, right? Going on a run and then resting, making a lot of money and letting it go. Taking in a lot of knowledge and then helping someone learn. That's the path of grace. That's the right path in that pendulum swing. The next and a really important thing to understand, because all paradigms are constructed in language, and all language is a construct of distinction. It pretends that Utah is separate from California. That's what language does. This is California, that's Utah. The only thing is, if you were to truly delete Utah and truly delete the ocean, like, because the ocean isn't California, or the coast is, but not the rest of the ocean. That's the deep sea. This is the coast. Well, if you were to cut California out from the rest of the world and just put it in space, California doesn't exist. First of all, everything dies in space. Secondly, the water on the beaches that is California would all go off the waterfall of what wasn't California, wherever that arbitrary line was that's cut with words. Thirdly, the rivers flowing in from Utah into California wouldn't be there, so all the crops would die in California. And my point is, even if words can cut the one into pieces, if the pieces wouldn't be the same pieces without all the other pieces, then they're not really pieces. They're part of an interconnected whole. And if they're part of an interconnected whole, it is a delusion to cut them into pieces. Right? So our entire framework of human consciousness is based on the delusion of pieces that could not exist without all the other pieces. Right? Utah couldn't exist without California. California couldn't exist without Utah. Do you understand what it would do to Jamaica to pull Utah off of Earth and stick it on the moon? The entire gravitational wobble, right? What tidal waves would happen in Jamaica because Utah went missing? 29 billion tons of Utah went off and got stuck on the moon. Now the moon's orbit is changing. The tides are going wonky. The Earth is wobbling. The Earth's core is erupting out of what was Utah. All the streams are aggravating it. The entire planet stops existing as it was because Utah left. But we have the cheek, the audacity, the arrogance to pretend that you can discuss Utah as a completely separate entity than the rest of the world, or that we could discuss the Earth as a completely separate entity to the rest of the universe, or that we can discuss you and I as a completely random, distinctive entity separate from everyone else. because the exact same code that created you and I creates every other human being. And so if we say, well, I don't like that bit of code, I don't like this human being, fine. Just change the code that creates humanity. But now everyone's different. It's like the gravitational constant. It's like, let's get rid of greed. Right? Well, now there's no Netflix. No Netflix? Right? Or let's get rid of fear. You know, what constant are you going to change? The entirety of humanity is affected by every turn of every one of the many dials that we invent in our mind with the delusion of language. If I change the dial, everything changes because we're all interconnected. Now, what we're really talking about is the evolution of human delusion, because human consciousness is predicated on language, and language is predicated on the delusion that Utah is separate from California, that a hand is separate from the body, that a body is separate from the heart, that the mind is separate from the body. Every single thought changes the body. Every body sensation changes every thought. Doesn't sound too separate to me. So what we're talking about is the evolution of human delusion as a framework or as a map for interacting with the one that is outside of human consciousness. If we look through that lens, the evolution of delusion, we can see that the most difficult delusions are the delusions that the one is cut into two and that one half of the one is better than the other half of the one. That's the most difficult of the delusions, followed by the delusion that the solution to that is for half of reality to go to war with the other half, and neither of them win. Right? Now we move from that to a slightly less onerous delusion by inventing a third word. It's not black and white, it's black, white, and color, right? The synergy in between. Now we have three. But if you look at this area here, we've still got a polarity. We've got this, and all the probability field created by this delusion is all there. Right? We got this, we got this, we got this. We've got this, but what about all this stuff in here? It doesn't exist within a tri-paradigm, within a paradigm of three. It just doesn't exist. This is what's real, that's not real, right? So you go to this, and what you do is you start, if you stay symmetrical, and symmetry ties in with grace, which ties in with efficiency. If you want to have a graceful ride, use a wheel, i.e. a round structure. If you want to have a bumpy ride, use a square. Grace ties in with symmetry. The more complex and the more symmetrical the shape, the more we move towards the sphere. The sphere is the most complex and most symmetrical shape. It is the most graceful shape. So naturally, it shows up a lot in the fractal patterns of the universe. Elliptics, spheres, circles. They're all over the place, constantly. Protons and electrons dancing around, right? The sun, the earth, orbitation, a study of cycles. Now, if we keep staying symmetrical, this square, four-sided shape will become a five-sided shape. The five-sided shape become a six-sided shape. Will become see if we got that right. A seven-sided shape, if I've got that right. There we have it. A 7-sided shape. Then will come an 8-sided shape. Now, what we're doing is, as we get symmetrical, we're beginning to develop a consciousness for more of what is. So when you have this, this is the good stuff, and that's the bad stuff. This is the conscious stuff, that's the unconscious stuff. This is us, and that's them. You're only getting 50% of what is into your model, basically, your good model. But as you get more and more complex over time, you start to get more and more of reality into your model as useful. You get more complexity, and you start to get a stronger, more resilient, more interesting structure, right? Because then this one goes to here and here and here and here. And the probability field and the possibility field around this structure of thought expands. Because what we're really dealing with is human consciousness, right? So the more points on the circle and the more they're distributed, the more resilient it is. The more like a bicycle wheel. If all the spokes were on one wheel, the rim would have to be much thicker or it would collapse, right? And that's what we're seeing here is a possibility field that, you know, even a 12-point, and you can see there are exponential. Like if I go from 12 to 13 points and create this net, I'm not just adding one. I'm adding more than 13 by adding one. Because every time you add one, you're just adding a word, which is adding your consciousness. Everything is inextricably connected to everything else. And so when you add something, you are also adding the invisible lines that connect it to everything else, which is vastly expanding your possibility field, which then expands your probability field, which expands your actual field. And the more options you have, the more you can choose the best option for you, and the more graceful it is. That's the right way, right? Moving towards complexity and grace and ease and efficiency is the right way to move versus simplicity. No, I don't ever watch TV. I never look at a phone, right? No. They're good or they're bad. I always look at my phone. I never look at a phone. I won't own one, right? Right? It's not the greatest possibility field is in the middle, right? Right and wrong is not something you find in a book. You find it in your body. You find it in geometry. You find it in mathematics. You find it in your feelings. You find it in your breath. You find it in life. You find it in dreams. You find it in the sweet spot between imagining something and getting it done. Always dreaming and doing nothing, always doing and never dreaming. You find it in the sweet spot of dreaming and getting things done, sleeping and waking. There is a right path and there is a wrong path for your well-being. And it is different for every single person.